Welcome to the Beyond Body podcast with your hosts, Mia and Holly. Join us for a sometimes fortnightly podcast
where we explore all things mental health, being a messy human, and how to get the most out of this one precious life.
And all the ridiculous stories in between.
Okay, and hello, Mill. Welcome to 2025. Everyone, this is the first podcast of the year. Apologies for that, but we are back and ready to record again.
Welcome back, everyone. We had a little bit of a scheduling thing towards the end of last year and early this year, as it tends to happen. How we forget that period is a weird time warp, I don't know, but we are stoked to be back for another year. We haven't gone anywhere.
So we've got a fun little episode in store today, but first, Mill, give us a little bit of an update. What's been a highlight of life lately, a low light of life lately?
Low light would be probably, again, I think I would have had the same answer last time, a little bit of what's going on politically around the world. Now that's definitely a thing, and we're seeing the impact of that. So sending love particularly out to our listeners who are in America, who are probably feeling a little bit of that anxiety. We hear you. We are watching it all. And highlight would be just got approved for a house on the South Coast.
Congratulations. That's so exciting.
Hol provided a little business reference for me because I obviously own my own business. So I was like, who do I ask a reference from? Like,
wait, when you asked me to be a reference, I love being a reference for someone.
I know you're like, I live for being a reference.
I was born to be a reference. I can't wait to be a reference.
So that was really odd because I was like, oh, that would have been the case last time too when I moved in here 2 years ago. So what did I do? I can't even remember. So that's really exciting. That's, we're going to be doing some of our ins and outs at the end of this episode, but that's definitely one of mine is getting out of the city. So that's hugely exciting because, I've been sort of teetering between what do I do? Do I stay? Do I go? But sort of finally making that decision and getting the house that, I saw come up and go, if I'm going to live on the coast, that's where I want to live. So to be able to know that that's coming in March means I can just pack this place up and all of that is sorted. So that's a very exciting next chapter.
It's so exciting. I also think something about moving at the beginning of the year just feels like very fresh and clean.
What about you, love? Highlight, low light?
Highlight, low light. I mean, like you were saying, it's just been a wild time of the year. I feel like just I think even like mid-November to mid-Jan, it kind of just feels like it's like fake time. Like it just doesn't really feel like real life. So I think I've had a bit going on lately. I think a low light is I did have a pet pass away a couple weeks ago, which was a hard start to the year, but also in reflection now, I think this, and you would so understand this weird thing happens when you go through something significant where like the world just has to stop and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think as hard as that is, it's also it was very like heart cracking open experience where I just felt so grateful for having the skills to be able to process, and just felt really grateful to be like, all right, when you like have big emotions, I think I would say like now an evolved experience with sadness where I'm like, okay, this emotion deserves my attention. It's forcing me to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be here for it. And I'm just going to be sad. And that's okay. And it's okay if everything in the world stops for that time. So even though it was a really hard like period of time, there's also just a lot of just gratitude, I think, in the experience of being able to have just such a heart-opening experience as well. Yeah. So that was a bit of a low light. But also, look, a lot of emotions coming into the new year, but that's okay. Highlight, this is going to sound like nothing, but I'm actually loving it. I've just done the really adult thing and have like bought myself all new socks and undies and like thrown out all like the old holy shit ones. And I feel like a goddamn queen. Unreal. It is such a good thing to find undies that you love and you're like, this is it. This is me now. Yeah. So I feel like that would be a highlight.
Gorgeous. I love it. I love a pair of socks. I love a fresh, bright white pair of socks.
Same. I'm super particular though with both socks and undies. The amount that I've bought that I'm like, it's just not quite right.
You also need like there's like undies for all seasons. Like you got your period undies, you've got like your I'm feeling cute today undies. It's like there's a whole lot of things that need to be. It's a very personal selection when like people Like if, for Christmas, mum buys me underwear, she has to check beforehand. She's like, what are we going for? What are we feeling? Because otherwise they're just going to stay in a packet and I'm never going to wear them.
I love period undies. Hey, people
Oh,
are really like, yeah, that's a 2025 in, which we're going to get to. But period undies, man, if you're not on the bandwagon, you should be.
yes, you need the secure, like you're almost wearing a pair of pants. Like they are full
Totally.
coverage.
Totally. Like I was, this is so team at the beginning. Welcome everyone back to the Film
I
Body
think that we
Podcast.
mostly probably have a woman audience, so I think we're safe.
Totally. There are no boys that listen to this. Please, like, tell us if you are, but I
If you
really
are,
don't
we
think
love
there
you.
is.
Thank you for being here, but also you're probably not even here.
That's, I used to use like the little like cups, little menstrual cups.
Mm.
I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, but like, man, sometimes that suction situation is a problem.
I never went there because of endo. Like when you see something and you're like, love that for all my other girlies, that's never going to be an option for me.
Yeah, it's a pretty humbling experience when you realize like the suction is so intense that it's a two-person job. And you're like, okay, girls, like the girls I was living, I was like, this is really going to push the friendship boundaries, but like something has to, I need help.
When men think of women bonding, they think of like they're drinking wine and having pillow fights, and we're like, girls, I've got a suction problem.
Like really YouTubing how to get this out.
Yeah, yeah, this is a team effort with my menstrual cup. So we're right into the get to know you
Okay,
portion of
okay.
the episode. So we thought that we would do a bit of crowdsourcing because we love our audience. We love being able to have this ongoing conversation with you all. So quite some time ago now, we asked you for sort of your lessons and accomplishments for last year because we wanted to spend a bit of time celebrating you, especially because we had just done the retreat, and that's such a huge part of the retreat is we are celebrating our attendees and reflecting on all their accomplishments so that they get that bit of fire in them to do whatever they've got to do next. So we thought we'd do that for the group. um what do we want to start with, whole lessons or accomplishments?
Maybe let's start with lessons.
Fabulous. So I love this first one because this was one of my recovery mantras, which was sent in over on Instagram. No one is going to save me but me. I can have help, but this is up to me. Why do you think this is such an important lesson?
Mm. God, it's so hard hitting, isn't it?
Yes.
I think very few lessons in life are going to be easy. They often really require you to turn inwards, not away from yourself. And this is an incredibly powerful one because I think, and it's one that I think everyone in recovery is going to have to learn sooner or later.
Mhm.
And it can be really scary, right? Particularly when so much of your conditioning has been to trust external things and opinions and expected paths and ideologies and all this stuff.
Yep.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is your one precious life. And a huge part of healing is that you need to take back your personal power
Mhm.
and really be able to create that and separate it from any codependencies that you have. So ultimately, everyone in recovery has to be the hero of their own story.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that this is such an important part of our role. Like I've had a couple of consultations this week,
Yeah.
and one of the things I keep coming back to is saying to them when we're talking about the help seeking and the email support and that they can reach out between sessions and we're kicking around all the challenges that are coming up between sessions during the week in real time. And I tell them like part of the point of that is that yes, first they're practicing accountability with me, but then they are ultimately building that bridge of accountability back to themselves. Because something else that's been coming up a lot lately, which I think speaks to this, is that, I will hear from clients often, I did it because I could get away with it. I did it because no one would
Mm.
know and I could get away with it. And my answer to them is always, you're never getting away with it because the one person
Mm.
who is impacted by that eating disorder self-choice is always watching, and that is you. Like the part of you
Mm.
that is doing this
Mhm.
work. And when I play the tape forward with them and I'm like, do you want to be where you are right now in 10 years? No. Okay, well then there's a part of you right now that doesn't want to do this eating disorder self thing, and you're going to have to pay for it if it keeps being given sort of that leeway
Mm.
to let that happen. So it's that reminder that yes, other people can be the sort of touchstone, they can be the reminder, but that you ultimately are your most important piece of accountability. Because here's the truth, like we go home and our lives are just what they are. Like we don't sit with the
Yeah.
anxiety of what your eating disorder is creating. You do. We don't sit with the guilt and regret about a behavior. You do. So this concept of like my
Mhm.
team won't know, she won't know. We had eating disorders. We'll eventually figure it out, by the way.
Mhm.
It'll start showing up. But that
Mm.
ultimate accountability being yourself is not just important because it helps you keep making progress, but I think it is one of the things that keeps you well long term is I did this. This, I am proud of this. This is an accomplishment.
Mm, absolutely. You said that so well. I think like that's when clients like really freeze. I think like you would experience this as well when you have goals with clients and you're like, I don't care if you achieve them. They're like, wait, what? What do you
Yeah.
mean? I'm literally doing this for you. I'm like, no, you're not. You're literally
Yeah.
not. I actually don't care. I mean, obviously we care, but
Yes.
this is what we do.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like this is your life.
Hmm.
You don't want, and this, so many people who have eating disorders obviously, attach very much to the eating disorder, but then also I think to, being in recovery and also having, really strong teams, etc. But at the end of the day, like you're not going to want any of these things, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to have a recovery team. You don't want to have an eating disorder.
True.
You do want to have is like this very consistent anchoring point of self that is going to be congruent for the rest of your life.
Yes, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
beautifully,
Yeah.
beautifully put. And yeah, I agree. Like I will I'll say similar things like, I don't like you don't do it then when they're like trying to argue getting out of it. I'm like, okay, don't do it. And they're like, but and I'm like, but you don't want to do it. So I'm not going to drive to your house and tie you down and make you do it. So you don't have to. And you're right. It's like then the healthy self kicks in of like, no, 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 but I want to. It's like, great, then let's talk about it from that angle.
Totally. Totally. And just even them being able to find that inner
Hmm.
fight, and they're like, shit, okay, there's no one here that's going to do this for me. I have to do this for me. It's so powerful. This is an amazing lesson.
Yes.
The next one that someone said in was accepting there is a point when you must take action and stop gathering information. Like,
Hmm.
hell yes, sis.
Hmm.
This reminds me of the busy work episode
Bingo.
that we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt the
Because
same
really,
thing.
like, everyone is so good at planning. If you have an
Hmm.
eating disorder, like you have a master's in planning. Like that's kind of
Hmm.
what it is. But you need a master's in doing, right?
Yeah.
I think when there is nothing else left to think and understand and everything left to practice,
Hmm.
the doing, not avoiding the doing, and is often also avoiding the feeling, right?
Yes.
And it's like, why are we not doing? Because we're scared of the emotions that are going to come up in there. But if you don't get that evidence that you actually can do the harder thing and you can deal with the emotional experience throughout it, you're not going to progress.
Completely. And as you say, like everyone is, there's a bit of a high, a bit of a dopamine kick with planning. That's why we all love to buy our
Totally.
journals and our
Yeah.
calendars in January, and we all have all the stuff and we have all the intentions and we've got all the physical material of how we're going to be so different or how we're going to approach this thing or this project. And then the gap between that and actually doing the thing is the steps that you have to take, right?
Mhm.
And don't get me wrong, I've said before, I think there is some power to being on the roundabout for a while and being in the planning, contemplative stage.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I speak to people all the time who are like, Mia, I want to do this work just because I'm fed up, not because they're super motivated and they've got a big why and they've got this great big, epiphany that's hit them recently. They're just fed up of the roundabout and the planning and the contemplation and
Mm.
that feeling when there's a cold pool and you keep revving yourself up to get in and then you back down and
Mm.
you keep revving and then you just feel kind of
Yeah.
exhausted by that process where it's like and then you think to yourself, God, if half an hour ago I just jumped in, I would have been in there for ages by now and I would be like warm and having fun and enjoying myself and floating around. Once you get fed up with that, that's all you need. Like I love fed up with clients because I'm like, yes, we can use fed up because the motivator is literally just, I don't want to stay where I am. There's a lot of
Yeah.
power to being fed up.
There is a lot of power to being fed up. I
Hmm.
also think, and I'm like definitely a victim. I used to do this all the time. Probably still do it in my life sometimes where you can be a really big dreamer,
Yes.
but, and it's so amazing to dream and to daydream and to manifest, but like you got to manifest plus doing, right?
Yes.
Otherwise it's literally just daydreaming, right? And I think even that in itself can be a bit of, if it's like done too much and there's no action going on, it can be also be a bit of avoidance.
Completely. I can't, we are so same page there. I was always like that. I was always like, I want to be a writer. I want to be this. I want to be that. And I remember one night, mum just getting so frustrated with me and being like, do you think someone's just going to knock on the door and be like, oh, I've heard that you're really good at XYZ. Would you like this? Like, that's not going to happen. And this is what I try to impart to people is that the game changer for me, being like that my whole life, just waiting for things to happen was recovery. It was this combination of I want that. I have to put in all this investment without any guarantee of what I'm going to get or that I'm going to get close to the outcome I want, but I'm still going to show up every day and do it on the hope and the just the pure energy of that is something I think I would like to have. And so I'm going to keep moving in that direction. Like I said, with no reward showing up for a really long time, that's the case for everyone. No one gets the big recovery rewards on day one. That was the difference. Anything worthwhile that I've ever done has been past recovery, and it's because of
Mm,
a particular
mm,
formula that I learned. And I think you're the
mm,
same because I would
mm,
never have guessed that you were like me in that sense, where it was like
mm,
waiting for things, big dreamer, but not taking the
mm,
steps. Because
mm,
that's what I know of you to be, that you're a big pursuer of what's important to you and
mm.
your dreams. But that's probably the thing we also have in common is that recovery
Mm.
taught us how to do it.
Totally. And I think it also really speaks to the importance of developing not only a trust with yourself, but a bit of a trust with life that like
Yeah.
good things are happening. And there has to be often in recovery that leap of faith. Like you don't get to know what your recovered like life looks like. Just like you and I and anyone in the world doesn't get to know what's going to happen in 12 months' time. But
No.
I think when you are moving through the world with a trust that like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think I'm going to be okay, or I'm doing these things and something good is going to come out of it, even if it's not becoming best-selling author, it's still like, okay, well, maybe you've developed so much confidence that something else opens up, that I think if you're
Yes.
moving in this direction, it doesn't matter what the end goal is, right?
Mhm.
It's so much about the way in which you're changing along the way as well. And I think just having, this is absolutely something recovery gave me, just having a bit like, just feeling like I'm a life trusting person. Like
Yes.
things are going to be hard and then they're going to be good. And then they're probably going to be hard again and then they're going to be good. And like, that's just the nature of life.
Yes, absolutely. Beautifully, beautifully said. So, this one I love because it's got one of my favorite recovery words in it. Treating recovery and life in general as an experiment, no need to predict anything, which kind of speaks to that
Mm,
one that we just
totally.
covered. But I
Yeah.
love the word experiment. This, if I can
Mm,
advise anyone like of an attitude shift for this year, it is to look at recovery as an experiment and not necessarily the whole process, but just the increments of it. The next week, whatever you're working on is just an experiment, and you just want to see with the variables that you're working with, where can you get to in the next week?
mm.
What goes well, what doesn't go well, what do you learn, and what do you do with it? I used to call it the three W's, now it's the four, because I realized I was always saying a fourth one, but I was calling it the three W's, which mathematically is incorrect, but very me because I suck at maths. But the experimental attitude, as opposed to, do I do well or poorly? Am I good or bad? Is just if you stay in that binary knife's edge kind of way of thinking, you're just carrying eating disorder thinking into recovery versus I'm going to throw a few things at the wall here, see what sticks, see what helps, and I'll take that with me and leave what doesn't.
Absolutely. I agree so much. I love the wording of this as well. So, like, let's just choose curiosity, not predictability. Like
Mhm.
life, the external part of it anyway, it's not supposed to be completely predictable anyway. Like, you have to be the thing that becomes predictable. So, I
Yeah.
think trying to predict and manipulate your external world in any certain way, it's going to be a losing battle, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love this, just let there be space for surprises and adaptability, because that's going to help you get more comfortable with the absolute of change, right?
Yes.
And I think that ability to be able to experiment with your life, it's kind of the difference between these two different experiences of life, sort of saying like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to do my best to care for myself, or I'm only going to be able to care for myself if things happen this exact way, right? And
Yes.
the first one is so much more expansive, and it also is so much more trusting. The second one is so based in fear. I think, and even if it's not necessarily directly food related, I'm sure we'd work with so many clients who are like, things need to be this exact way. Like, they need to be the exact same repeated experience of yesterday and tomorrow and all these things. But we can't control any of that. So this ability to be able to be like, I'm just going to see what happens. I'm just going to experiment. I'm just going to rip the band-aid off is so powerful and such a transferable life skill.
Yes, 100%.
So this next one, I love this. Rest is necessary and not lazy.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Rest is the gosh damn most productive thing you can ever do. And it's such a thing, right? Because we're not taught how to rest. We're taught what laziness is. And
Yes.
then that is so often intertwined, right? With resting having this really negative attitude. But part of recovery is about having the time to just digest the learnings, sit with the feelings,
Mm.
process the experience it. So to process, you need space and calm and intentional down regulated time, right? Like
Yeah.
you need quality sleep and you need moments of peace from your day just to be able to return back to that regulated nervous system state. And I think this lesson for this person, which is super cool, I think it really comes from a bit of this splitting away from society's like hustle culture, which
Yeah.
also is my least favorite word. It's a big 2024 out,
Yeah.
2025 out also for me. I think
Yes.
because to hustle, right? Is often to override the genuine needs to rest and rejuvenation and quiet. And that is just such a disservice to someone's healing process, right?
Mhm.
I think so often people get burnt out in recovery, and it's because this is a missing piece. They haven't yet learned how to rest.
Yeah, and that recovery absolutely requires periods of rest. I know that there's recovery rhetoric out there which isn't in line with that, which I've always found really, really frustrating. Like if you're not actively recovering every day, or if you're not like pushing in your recovery, you're dying. And it's like that's a lot. But that's not how any of this works. It's, I don't like that all my metaphors are usually movement based, but it's like when you go on a hike, if you spend the whole time with your head down looking at the ground and never checking where you are and like looking up at your surroundings and actually experiencing it, right? Like why are we on the hike? Why are we outside? We could just be on a treadmill if we're just going to keep our head down.
Totally.
But if you never stop and, have some water and have a protein bar and reflect on the map and go, oh, that's how I got myself here. Oh, great. Okay. Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
sit here and I'm going to take in the view. I'm going to have a chat to my, friend who's come with me, and I'm going to spend as long here as I need to. And then that's going to give me the ability to learn from how I got to this point. And then, oh, actually, the next part doesn't seem so enormous and doesn't seem so far away because I've got a little bit of like context back as far as the whole
Mm,
journey.
mm,
And so, yeah, if we're bringing in some of that hyper productivity, it's kind of like, if we bring perfectionism into our goals, you're literally leaving out a huge part of the recovery work, which is like, how do you talk to
mm,
yourself about this stuff? How do
mm,
you think about this stuff? How do you treat yourself? And even though, everything is not for the aim of being productive, it is a truth that you can't be productive if you don't rest. So it's even a huge contradiction of eating disorder self to keep pushing this concept of like, you must be productive, you must be productive. Because if you're hyper productive, it is unsustainable. You're going to hit a wall and you're going to be
totally.
out of your life, out of necessity, putting yourself back together. And those periods of,
Yeah.
dropping down from hyperproductivity, if you add those up over the course of your life, you're going to be way less productive than if you just, as you say, naturally build in periods of rest and intentional rest. You're
Mm,
overall going to be a much more
yeah.
productive person. So, yeah, the concept that these things are opposite, where they actually belong together,
Mm,
rest and productivity are two halves of the same whole. Um, and if anything, as you said, if we can prevent burnout by working on these beliefs, uh, that's just one
mm,
area where rest is going to benefit people versus past like the recovery process and
mm,
becoming comfortable with being able
totally.
to be nice to yourself.
Yeah, and I also think my other point on this as well is that often the productivity it comes with like a sense of like it's like ego, accomplishment, pride, but also a need to feel like you have to fill the space of life. And when
Yeah.
clients are like, "Oh, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to do this," I'm like, "Ah, no, 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 no. We're not doing anything. We're not doing anything." Because it often is like, why do you want to fill the space? Ask yourself that. Like, is it a fear of avoidance of actually just being with yourself? Like when I talk to clients about mindfulness and aspects like that, and they're like, "I could not possibly sit with myself." I'm like, bingo. We
Yeah.
need to figure out how to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to sit with yourself and not fill the space of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Starting again is not synonymous with starting over.
Great word.
Beautiful.
Um, this is a great one, right? I think it's kind of like leads on from what we were just saying, but when someone, it sort of goes to say, when someone has a recovery pause or are overcoming, lapse or relapse, they can so often feel like, oh, I'm beginning again. And it's so important to realize that you're never starting from the start. You
Yeah.
might be starting the engine again, but you're not on the same part of the road.
Yeah.
Um, you can't be starting again, right? Because you're not who you were then. You're a different person now. You have a little bit more evidence, a little bit more earth under your feet, and a little bit more probably experience and resilience and trust in the tank for this next phase of your healing. But
Yeah.
I can understand how this would be a really hard lesson to learn because, it takes a, your confidence does take a blow when things go backwards for sure. But I also think sometimes people are not ready to go all the way, right? I think and it's not to say anyone's ever ready to go the entire way of recovery. Like you're never going to be 100% ready, so don't be waiting for that. But
Yes.
I do feel like someone can have a great team and people really pushing them along, but again, it has to come from them.
Mhm.
And sometimes you got to fall down a few times to learn some of those lessons that are really going to help you get to the end.
Yes, completely. And I think it's helping people to see that your recovery attempts or recovery phases are not silos. They're not these individual attempts
Mm.
that you made and then they didn't quote unquote work. And so you bin them. They're all one long arc towards whatever the outcome is going to be for you. Because as you said, like you can't take, if you go, even if you consciously say, I'm not recovering anymore, I'm done, you don't then pull out the wiring you have been able to build in your brain and throw it in the bin. Like you can't just undo what you've
Totally.
done. So if you tap back into that, it's still there. It needs to be exercised a bit and brought back to the center
Mm.
of your mind. But it doesn't just
Mm.
disappear. It doesn't just dissipate because you decide that you're kind of over it, right? So when people say to me, I've
Yeah,
been at this for
absolutely.
X amount of time and, it has to work this time. And I'm like, well, it's all one big path and you're just on this part of it,
Mm.
but you're only here because a past version of you did that work then. So as you said, like you can't, even though the car might have stopped, you can't then teleport it back to the beginning. It is just wherever you
Yeah.
dropped it off. And then
Yeah.
it's a matter
Yeah.
of because every time somebody comes to me with like this pass fail win lose mentality where they're like, well, Mia, I didn't do X well this week, so I didn't reach out to you and I didn't dialogue and I didn't do this. And I'm like, okay, then what are you going to do the next time that thing happens? Because eating disorders are cyclical. You're going to get an urge again. You're going to want to do this again. Your eating disorder is going to want to isolate you again. So what did you learn from it? If you just keep binning the lessons, then you never examine them, even when they don't go to plan. You don't get to examine them and go, where did this go wrong? What would I do differently next time? Right? Like whenever clients
Mm.
come and they've had a
Mm.
terrible week, my first question is, okay, let's go back to that one situation and let's time travel back there. Now, with the knowledge you have, what would you do differently? Because it's going to happen again. So
Mm.
not looking at these recovery attempts or even our goals or whatever as like these little individual, if I don't do well, I throw it away. If I do well, then I take it with me. It's like it's all worth taking with you because going back to the experiment thing, it's data and you just decide what you're going to do with it.
Absolutely. I had a client session this week and they're a little bit just feeling a bit low because they'd engaged in behaviors and hadn't for quite a long time. But except how they were feeling after engaging the behaviors was like, that was awful. How
Yes.
did I ever like enjoy that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
cool, this is amazing information to have now. Because I also do think that, sometimes you almost have to revert back to your old life to realize that does not fit me anymore. Like
Yeah.
that sucked. So now it's like that motivation didn't really have it before. Like that's actually amazing. So I think it's so much about this is the way in which you're looking at the harder experiences and what we're going to do to further evolve from them.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can resonate with that feeling of like we try to go back and then we're like, oh, this is terrible. And if it's terrible now, it was probably always terrible. So yeah, it's not giving yourself permission to free
Totally.
fall backwards. But if you do slide backwards and it doesn't feel great, that is a really great indicator that you are pretty healthy self-dominant because your eating just sort of loved that stuff. But your healthy self is like, no, thank
Totally.
you. This feels dreadful.
Totally. That's how I feel about like 2000s fashion. I was cleaning out like a wardrobe the other day and I was like, whoa, this I ever liked. This was my choice. This was
Yeah.
my preference.
You couldn't pay
Like
me to walk
that
out
just
the
made
house
me
in this. It's like you couldn't pay me to use a
tick.
behavior. No chance.
So the last one we have here is someone has said, learning that I'll be okay without the behaviors. I can manage. I am adaptable.
Yes.
So powerful. I
Yes.
think often below the behaviors and kind of just subtly operating as a roadblock to progress is someone's lack of belief in themselves that they're actually going to be okay without the behaviors.
Mm.
And that, because those behaviors have been kind of keeping their head above water for a period of time. So it makes so much sense. I
Yes.
think this is a belief that just it shifts over time as that evidence is really building up, that you actually can, in fact, move through a hard moment without behavioral engagement. And
Mm.
even these moments, even if they are micro moments at the beginning, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be sitting with the discomfort of the world's biggest urge, right? It can be moving through just the discomfort of like getting a bit out of routine, right? Or like eating a slightly different food or whatever it might be, because all those little micro moments of discomfort are going to help you build this belief of like, hey, I can actually do hard things. I don't have to lean into instant gratification. Like I can play the long game here.
Yeah.
So even how this person has worded this, you can feel like their pride and
Yes.
power in it. Like I can manage, I am adaptable.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful lesson to finish the lesson portion because it's ultimately the
Mm,
point. It's the point of all of this is the self-trust
mm,
and the leaning into your healthy self. And, comes back to the idea of your eating disorder self was never evil. It always had pretty good
mm.
intentions. Its execution sucks. But it's sort
Yeah,
of as evil as a 3-year-old who wants to cook you dinner. You don't leave the 3-year-old in the kitchen to alone to cook you dinner, even though the intention is beautiful. They want to do something to take care of you. They're not equipped to cook dinner. They're going to hurt themselves. They're going to hurt you, and they're going to burn the house down. So the intention might be
mm,
good to keep you safe, to protect you, to prevent things from happening before that were uncomfortable or awful or traumatic. But the execution of eating disorder self is the 3-year-old in the kitchen. It's going to be a disaster, and you're going to end up in a much worse position than before they got into the kitchen.
totally.
So it's being the adult, like reparenting part of you going, I hear that. I hear that young, vulnerable part of me showing up saying, I need protection and safety and help. And then recovery is the practicing of your healthy self to go, oh, I can
Mm,
do that now. I've learned how to do that.
totally.
I know how to take care of myself and how to regulate and have boundaries and how to talk to myself in a way that's more productive and to do the practical physical things that take care of me and prevent those eating disorder things from happening that ultimately hurt me. So
Mm,
it is
mm,
it's not the rejection of that part of ourselves. That's why I love how Carolyn uses that word integrate, because the eating disorder is not part of you. That is an external illness that was genetically kicked off, or whatever your perfect storm was. But that vulnerable part of you it latched onto, that was never bad or evil. It was trying to do this too.
mm,
It was trying to manage. It was trying to be adaptable. It
mm,
just didn't have the
mm,
skills, and your healthy self
mm,
didn't get to
mm.
practice its skills because eating just sort of panicked and took over. And so it's a
Totally.
beautiful thing when we're like I have a client at the moment who I think for the first time is really starting to trust their healthy self. And it is
Oh,
amazing to see because it's been such a foreign concept to them for so long. And I think they're probably one of the clients who has not believed that there's a healthy self. So to see that light coming on and that trust of healthy self coming on is like, once you've got that, you can't undo that knowing.
yeah, I know. And I think it's so powerful. It's so cool. I had a similar thing. I have a client at the moment who's like, and now a lot of things that she said in a session this week, she's like, some of the stuff you were saying at the beginning, like learning to trust yourself, that meant nothing to me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
really nodding along though. Um,
Yeah.
and it's like she's now really in a phase of intentionally trying to like do the scary thing. It's so cool. So
What a legend.
I know, such a legend.
Yeah.
So it's super cool when you see people kind of getting to this point of realizing like, hey, those basic needs are still going to be met. We're actually just doing it in like a way more sustainable way.
Yes. Yeah. So now we're
Mhm.
going to head into some of our accomplishments that were sent through from our beautiful listeners. This first one I love because this is actually something that came up
Mhm.
at the retreat, was somebody sharing that this is something they do. And we were like, what a beautiful indication of like
Mm.
how healed a relationship with food can be, which is having ice cream before noon.
Obsessed with this one. When I was in
Yeah.
Italy, I literally had like an 11 a.m. ice cream routine. I think what this really highlights is not only the relinquishing of rules, but the turning of those rules on their head, right? It
Yeah.
shows like this person is pushing past their bare minimum of challenging the eating disorder, which would be like challenging ice cream.
Mhm.
But like have dessert for breakfast, because these experiences are all completely neutral. So I love that this person, they have not just stopped at that point where they're like, this is okay. Like I can like eat a meal plan and kind of like have a bit of variety. They're like, no, no, I'm going to feel 100% comfortable with any potential food option there is, which is so
Yes.
cool.
I think it's such a beautiful indication of what is possible because I think people have an idea of what this is going to be like. Like they can see the meal plan and they're like, okay, I can imagine what that's going to be like. But then beyond that, they're like, what is this going to be? And this is one of them, which is that there is just not much to think about. There is just intuition and there is, trusting that intuition and the cravings and all that kind of stuff. And, I think that I don't know, we deify intuitive eating in a way where we're like, oh my God, it's this thing up on a pedestal. Intuitive eating is also like, you might feel like steak, but you have fish in the fridge. And so you're going to have that for dinner.
Mm.
So it's not, oh my gosh, I just, react to every single thing I want. And I would never have anything that I don't want because that's not a flexible relationship with food either. But then there are these really beautiful moments of, yeah, that's exactly what I feel like right now. And there's no limits to it. There's no time constraints. There's no rules. There's no rigidities. There's nothing preventing me from doing that. And we do that as coaches as well because, and it's a necessity in the work that we do because I'll be working with a client who's in America and they want to have ice cream as a challenge and it's their 8 o'clock at night and it's my 10 o'clock in the morning. Um,
Mm.
and so having practiced that in my own recovery where I would have breakfast for dinner. Did this just recently when I
Mm.
was down on the South Coast where mum was like, oh, you're going back to Sydney. We didn't get to have pancakes for breakfast. I was like, well, we'll just have them for dinner. Like being able to move
Mm.
things around was such a unexpected benefit to
Mm.
be able to really shake that idea of even socially accepted constructs around food. Like you can't have lunch too early,
Mm.
or like you hear it at work where people are like,
Mm.
oh, it's 11 o'clock, I'm hungry, but it's too early. It's like, you're hungry, eat. There are
Totally,
no rules
totally.
here. There's no
Yeah.
parameters. Just
Yeah.
listen to the body and go with it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that explanation of intuitive eating because it's exactly like that. It's like, it's not just about, I'm only going to eat this because this is exactly what I like and exactly what my body is intuitively telling me. I'm like, you
Yeah.
don't know what kind of nuts your body wants right now.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
And it's also sounds a bit eating disorder, right? Like
It
I'll only eat the food I
does.
like. It's like, no, sometimes someone will put something in front of you and it tastes awful, but you love them and they love you and they made it for you. You're not going to go intuitively, this is not what my body is telling me I want. No, thank you, and push it away. So
Yeah.
it's the most uncomplicated thing, but I understand that when you're in the beginning of the process, you're like, that sounds very complicated, but it's actually there's not a lot of thinking about it. It just kind of is.
Totally. So easy to like just make it really complicated. Like just literally simplify it. Just
Yes.
it's literally simplify it.
Yes.
The next one here is which I love this one so
Me
much because the
too.
one I was going to talk about, it's sort of like it is the glimmer of life and living and a depth of life that I just hope for everyone. And it is holidaying with friends, eating the pasta and having the wine with them. First time ever. Like it's
Yeah.
so special. There's nothing in the world that I love more than a well-lived-in dinner table with people like passing down the bread and laughing and conversation. Is life. That is literally life to me.
Yes.
So I can just feel the joy behind this accomplishment.
Yeah.
That is just such an expression of magic.
Oh, completely. I mean, this was one of the moments when I realized that my recovery was working, was when I went out for lunch with people and the waiter came and took my main away and like plate was clear and I was having like a glass of red wine and I was like, I haven't had a thought. I haven't had anything. And like maybe eating disorder would have caught up with me the next day and started, giving me hell about it. But in that moment, I was like, I can be present. I can do this. I can be locked into the conversation. I can laugh at the jokes. I can be silly. Like I'm not just sitting here like I did for so long, like a Stepford wife, lights on, no one's home. Just sort of like sitting here,
Mm.
paying more attention to how I'm being perceived and what's going on in my head than I am looking out at my own life. So when these come up in sessions with clients or anyone mentions that they've had one of these moments, um, that's one of the biggest wins. That's one of the biggest indicators of true progress, being able to experience the life part of it, not just I could eat the food, but like what was happening while you were eating the food? Was the food the background music, or was it like your laser focus
Mm.
on it?
Totally. It's yeah, it's so beautiful. The next one is I'm living my life having fun working, and that doesn't mean that I'm not sick enough for recovery. Man, 2024 out, sick enough narrative.
Two words I'm so sick of hearing, sick enough. Like, I'm with you. Throw it in the dumpster. No more.
I had a client yesterday, and this was a massive thing for her, but she's gone through massive evolution the last couple of months in a program. And I said to her yesterday, first session in a while, I was like, is the sick enough in the bin? She's like, it's in the bin. Yeah. This is the thing. There's always going to be someone that's sicker than you, and that doesn't mean that you're not worthy of care. You are just as worthy as every other person who's ever had a distressing relationship with food and body, despite severity or diagnosis. Like you are worthy for the support that you deserve from the moment you were born.
Yes. And the thing is that, and I understand the sick enough narrative can come from medical professionals, and like it's not just
Mm.
something people make up. It is part of the eating disorder, cognitive symptomatic profile, but it's also reinforced by, treatment and medical professionals, etc. Like when I hear about people going into a particular program here in Sydney who are asked as they're leaving, would you like to book in again for the next couple of months from now? I could literally lose my shit. Like it is so frustrating. And then whole people are like, oh, there's these coaches out there telling people they can be fully recovered. Like, how terrible. It's like, are you for real? Like traditional treatment is like getting people better and then offering them a bed again in a couple of months. What are we doing? Anyway, that's just a little, just a little vent, a little aside from me. Um, but yeah, the whole concept that you are not sick enough is going to, it's just furthering everyone's illness. Do you know what I mean? Like it is, we're keeping, everyone's getting stuck in this vacuum. And I say to clients all the time, like, if you had a family member who you found out had cancer, would you prefer it got caught at stage 4 or stage 2? And they're like, stage 2. And I'm like, what about stage 1? Yeah, stage 1. Okay, same thing. Like it's how severe does it need to get before you feel worthy to have treatment for cancer? Well, what a silly question, because you just want it to be caught early enough that maybe they're healing from it and their time spent in treatment wasn't as long, and that they would have a really, really, really great chance of turning it around, right? And not that we believe that anyone is actually terminal when you have an eating disorder, because that's that old school, severe and enduring thing that I do not support. I think that it's a lazy classification of the eating disorder because, for a treatment professional to tell anyone that they are never going to get better is wrong. That is not up to that professional. It is up to the individual to decide what is possible for them. But yeah, I didn't realize how annoyed I was by this. But yes, sick enough has got to go.
Yeah, that has got to go. So the next one we have here is beautiful, and it says, letting hope in again, allowing myself to believe I might be worth it. I think whoever wrote this, you are sure as hell worth it. I think
Yeah.
everyone, every damn person is so worthy of so much more than having an eating disorder.
And of not believing that they're worth it no matter what they're doing,
Um,
and this is where I believe that recovery is such a beautiful avenue for so many different things that maybe are hurting, that really have nothing to do with eating disorder. You don't have to have an eating disorder to not think that you're worthy, but
Yeah.
recovery can be this amazing demonstration of the fact that you are worthy, and of what you are capable of, even when you don't think you're worthy, right? Like even
Totally.
that isn't a condition of entry for recovery. I've shared many times. I hated myself when I was sick. I thought I was the worst person on the planet, and that self-compassion and love for myself didn't show up for a long time, but I kept going just purely based on the
Mm.
practicalities of eating disorder promising things that never were delivered. But then in hindsight, once the worth did start showing up, it was because I'd shown myself that I could do esteemable things even when I didn't have self-esteem. Like I could
Mm.
do good,
Yeah,
brave, really hard things even without the condition of, well, yeah, because I think I'm worth it.
totally.
So the worth isn't something you wait for. I think it's something
Yeah.
you create.
Yeah, kind of in that sense, like motivation as well.
Totally.
Um, Big 2025 outs, just this was just reminding me of this, like settling for the bare minimum of anything,
Yes.
right? Like, do not settle if someone is not treating you well. Do not settle for feeling the experience of low self-worth.
Mhm.
No, 2025 out, everyone, no one is settling.
No, in any arena, and not even for how you talk to yourself.
Totally. We're just really jumping on the bandwagon here and going to tell you some of our own 2025 recovery influenced ins and outs. So you could take some for yourself. We might even disagree about some of these. And some of them are obviously, very relevant to the recovery community, and some of them are just random things that we do and don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mill, what are some of your outs?
One of my outs, which I think is very recovery relevant for clients and people watching, is doom scrolling.
Oh, same. That was my first one.
Right, me
I
too.
read this appalling. appalling statistic in a book the other day. I'm going to get it
Oh,
wrong, but it was like appalling. And it was something like if your screen time is like 5 hours a day, it like amounts to like 17 years of your life or something. It was like something jarring, so
I
jarring.
don't think I'm on
So
5 hours. How do you do 5 hours?
honestly, pretty easily. I think it's a bit unfair though. Sometimes it's like when you're listening to music, it's counting that. When I'm
They're
using a
not.
meditation app, it's
No.
counting that. Like that, like
And
does
like
not.
YouTube, like I'll be watching a documentary in the background while I'm working. That's
Mm.
is that doom scrolling?
No, no, no. That's not doom scrolling. That's still your
Okay.
screen time though.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, doom scrolling is just when the phone has 100% of your attention.
Yes, and it's like it's that I think of it as that like short bursts of interaction and
Yeah.
like you're not actually paying
Yeah.
attention to anything for a long period of time. This is
Yeah.
ba a bad one for me because obviously like my TikTok went bananas over the last 12 months and
Mm.
so I have a look like I have a community and following over there. So I love that part of it, but then I jump into the watching part of it and I remember for so long because I resisted TikTok for years and only got on it last year. And I remember people being like, you will literally look up and an hour would have gone and you have no, like, there's something about it. There's something almost
Mm.
like drug induced about it. And I was like, oh, whatever. I get it now. It is the most, like, it's escapism, but obviously often
Mm.
anxiety inducing escapism. There is something about that algorithm that they have nailed because
Mm.
it is the most time blindness I have ever experienced.
It
And
is
that
like time
feeling
blind.
alone of like losing that time feels terrible.
It does for sure. I think it's like it's about having boundaries with yourself. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a little scroll and like laughing. Like my algorithms are always just like funny videos and
Yeah.
babies and like random things like that. And I just love it. Like I'll just be crying, laughing, saying to my sister in the room, "Have you looked at the video I just sent you yet? We'll
Yeah,
watch it now.
yeah.
I'll watch it with you." Like it's like
Yeah.
that experience. But I think when you notice that you have the urge to do it because you don't want to do something else, that's when it's
Yes.
a big out for me. 90s thin and just generally body trends.
Uh,
These are not supposed to be trends.
yes.
Um, I'll just spitball some of my favorite ones here for you, Mel.
Go for it.
One, purchases. I need to spend t more time thinking about purchases. Like, didn't I
Okay.
need to have the full CoStar? Yeah, reading. I didn't, but here we are. Like sometimes I just Apple Pay on your phone is such
It
a
will all,
problem.
sorry, anytime you talk about spending, I always think about the peacock. I always go back to the
Oh,
peacock that you bought on Gumtree.
no.
So I think if we're not purchasing actual livestock and animals, then we're fine. I think anything below that is definitely something you can rein in.
Yeah, it's a hard no.
Yeah.
It's a hard no, some of those things.
Yeah.
Straight up unhinged recovery content, skinny
Yeah.
girl content, diet culture content. It's 2025. Come on, guys. We can do
Yes.
better than this.
What I eat in a day is
Obviously, like,
out. I mean, this is my
yeah.
11th year of saying it, but please, for the love of God, I've 11 years of being in the space. I can't say it anymore. Enough with the what I eat in a day. So nobody should care. It is so boring.
Surely it just needs to be replaced with something else, like anything.
Anything.
It probably will be. It'll probably be replaced with like what I watch in a day. Like these are the videos that I'm watching. External validation. I feel like
Yeah.
this is a big 2025 out. It's like just and also with that, unwarranted advice. Someone doesn't
Yeah.
ask for your advice, don't give it to them.
Yes.
I obviously had on here keeping undies that are falling apart. Like that is out. I'm
Out.
never doing that again.
Done.
The new year. Smart casual. It literally makes no sense in my mind, and I don't want to be put into a box.
What's your beef with smart casual?
I just feel like it's unnecessary. It's like you can dress smart, you can dress casual, you can dress something in between. It
I
doesn't have
see
to
what you're
be
saying.
like
I've never
you have
understood. I've never understood it. I always imagine like a blazer with jeans, and I'm like,
to.
that's not. I don't think anyone wants to wear that to. What is the event we're all wearing jackets and like jeans to?
I just don't know. Again, 90s, 2000s fashion. That's what that is.
Yeah.
What are some more of yours, Mill?
Trying to do everything at once, which I think is both
Mm.
recovery and life.
Yeah.
As you know, I have a few things that are happening, and now
Mm.
I've got these two worlds where I'm in the women's space and I'm in the recovery space.
Mm.
And I have felt this big tension between how do I make both of these work and make them work, have not make them work, but like both of them have my equal attention all the time.
Mm.
That's impossible. And I have
Mm.
ways that I can make all of it fit. And a huge part of that is not being perfectionistic with myself and giving myself a goddamn break sometimes. Which also leads
Totally
into my
love that
other
for you.
one. which is what makes that impossible, which is saying yes to things because I feel bad for saying no. I am, whenever somebody
Mm,
reaches out and needs something or would like guidance on this or whatever, or like my immediate answer is yes, because I do love doing that. I love being a problem solver. I love a complicated situation and going, we'll try this and do that and da 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 da. But I have just noticed, particularly in the last few months, being in a space that is a couple of spaces that are really heavy, eating disorders, domestic violence, women's safety. It's like, yes, I
mm,
can solve those problems. There are some I cannot. They are so above my ability to be able to solve because they're
mm.
deeply complex from a societal level. There's nothing I can do. But even the things I can do, uh, I've only got so much energy to go around. And if I try to do it all now, I'm not going to be in it for the marathon. I'm only going to be doing a sprint.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that for you. I really like this for you. Another one that I feel like could just be relevant for the recovery community, 2025 out, rejecting parts of yourself that you think are unlovable. I feel like this is just a year for everyone to embrace their
Yeah.
entire selves, the messy, the raw, the beautiful, the chaotic, all of it.
Yes.
Um, I would also say expected timelines. Like
Yes.
you don't get to know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. And it's less fun if you
Um,
try to.
Totally. Also, some other ones, obnoxious key rings. I just don't get the big key ring situation. And hairless animals, cats and dogs, they both make me stressed.
What
But
about
again, personal preference.
what about people with allergies?
Yeah, you can get oh, I was gonna say you can get allergenic cats, can't you? But like they're hairless.
Oh no, you
Okay.
can. You can. You can get like Russian blues and
Can
stuff.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you can get a poodle. Like their hair doesn't shed. You're good. I am an allergy cat person. I can get it. Any more outs, Mill, before we jump into some of our ins?
I don't think so. I think they were probably my biggest ones.
I'd say some ins. Intentional recovery content.
Yes. And
Bakery trips,
yes.
most days.
Yep.
I feel like
Um,
clubs are really in.
I think definitely more like gentle love, like gentle, inclusive recovery content. I feel like the foundations and stuff are doing a really good job of being really inclusive and doing that. And
Oh.
the more like the 90s skinny trend is coming back, the more that we're seeing people documenting their recovery who fit the eating disorder stereotype, which is very, very annoying because we have moved so far with inclusivity and diversity. But there just seems to be,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of irresponsible posting in terms of bodies we're showing and how we're showing them. And yeah, let's keep that gentle and inclusive.
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of my 2025 ins are just like lifestyle things.
Yeah.
Hydration, it's never been a strong point for me. Really going to work on this.
Yes.
Um, Generally like affirmations. Just like when I'm talking to myself in the morning, just really like talking to myself like it's going to be a good day.
Yeah.
You're a goddamn rock star. Like you've got this. Like just
Yeah.
always having that like inner fangirl talking to yourself.
Yep.
Um, Slow mornings, absolutely. Also, social exercise, I feel like is cool.
Yeah.
Like, join a social sport. I'm going to do that this year. Don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'm going to do something like, whether it's like dance or netball or like something that is just social, I feel like is super fun. Girl dates, going on dates with your girlfriends.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Just like make it, and also romanticizing your life. Big 2025 in.
Yeah. I'm gonna buy a kayak.
Oh,
That's one of
cool.
mine. Very
Cool.
specific.
I like that. That's nice.
I'm moving somewhere which is right near like this lagoony inlety thing. So I want to be either on a paddleboard or a kayak in the mornings.
Oh my God, beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a paddleboard you could absolutely have. It was a 21st present that, and I didn't, I lived in the middle of Melbourne at the time. I was like, this feels really random, Dad. Really random. But it's a
Okay.
beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful stand-up
Thank
paddleboard.
you for having this dream for my life that doesn't match my current
It's
situation at all.
one of those classic parental presents where you're like, I've asked for a really specific thing. Like I wanted a four-post bed and I got a sub. I was like, okay, I don't know what to do in this situation.
Smile and
Um,
hug. Um,
Other real quick ones of mine. Homemade gifts.
love
Love
that.
that. Sprinkles on food. I always put sprinkles on yogurt. It just makes life a bit fun.
Cute.
Kissing dogs on the head. for
Love
sure.
that.
And texting back, none of this left on red stuff. It's out.
I know I'm terrible with that though, because like I'm on 800 different platforms. Voice notes. I want to normalize voice
In.
notes. Josie and I send each
Yeah.
other podcast length voice notes every day, and it's the best form of communication I've ever experienced in my life. Because then there's an expectation that's going to take a hot second to give like a full download onto a voice note. I
Mm,
I don't do well with the texting at all.
mm,
More
mm,
community building with women for me, both obviously what we're doing with retreats and events to run for women. And,
mm.
I've started this Patreon from the women's space stuff that I'm doing, which is like getting to get women together on lives, like safe lives where we can all sort of connect, etc. But also more community building in my own life. Like when I move down the coast, I want to join a hiking club. If there isn't one, I'm going to start one.
Totally. Be the club.
Be the
Whether
club.
it's supper club, book club, anything.
Be the thing you're looking for. More
Totally.
creativity. I'm like, as much as I create a lot of stuff, not enough sort of like living in a creative world in my brain. So
Got
more
it.
writing and more stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously moving out of the city.
I love that for you. I
Yeah.
feel like my other one is like just loving seasonal eating, going to the market, being like, what produce is there? Let's just
Yeah.
have a look. I love that.
Yeah.
So I think lots of like really beautiful, but also powerful ins in terms of like just living your life and really being able to determine what you want.
Yes, absolutely. So we would encourage everybody to leave some ins and outs for us,
Oh, please.
or even some of your accomplishments or your lessons,
Mm.
whatever you like. You can leave comments over on Spotify and on YouTube. Can't on Apple, unfortunately. And we're just so stoked to be back and to do another year with you. It's been a hot second since we got to do this, but it didn't take long into the recording for me to go, oh yeah, I love doing this.
Yeah, me too. It's just so nice. I love it. I felt like so ready for a girl chat.
Yes. And on big important things, which we're so blessed that we get to do that all the time. Also, we still have a few tickets left for the Bali retreat in August, which I'll pop the promo at the end here so that you can see what amazing stuff we have in store. I'm going back over in April, which I'm very excited about to be in Bali, as always. And you can check out the website too, so you can see which rooms have been taken. And don't hesitate to send us an email and reach out. We have a couple of people who are likely going to be taking tickets too. So we've probably only got, I would say, really two or three left at this point.
We are just so excited for it as well. So if you want to come
Yes.
hang out with us for 6 days,
In Bali.
please do.
Um, Anyway, Hol, we will be back in a couple of weeks. And as always, leave us any suggestions for episodes you'd like us to do, any subjects. We're going to be doing some more Q&As because we know you guys love them. But stoked to do the next year with you, Hol.
Me too. I think it's going to be a really good one for everyone.
Yes.